Alright, so the Gwent 9.6 patch notes are out, and I want to see if we can get through them within the next 10 minutes. The patch drops tomorrow morning. I want to make sure you guys are prepared, and I want to make sure that I'm prepared as well, so we can go ahead and craft some great decks and take over the ladder by storm. So let's look into it real quick. We got some changes here. So change in the path to access reward book and draft. Reward book is accessed in the main menu. Draft could be moved to the play menu. That's pretty cool. I mean, just little cosmetic differences here. Drain word now ignores armor. It should have in the first place, so it's good to see a little bit of a bug fix there. A couple new features. We have a new icon for non-charge order abilities, I guess, to keep the cards a bit more clear and to make sure that we're not making as many mistakes, I guess. Added option to skip steps of removing and adding packages in draft. Okay. New trees in the reward book connected to December card drop. That's good because I'm sitting on 100 plus keys that I'm looking to spend, and I've completed everything, so that's awesome. I'm sure you guys feel the same way about that one. Now, for neutral, Ulgard immortality ability changed to this card's power cannot be changed by other cards or abilities. Alright, so they pretty much just honed in on it and specified what they meant by that. Vesemir Mentor now also boosts self. Again, something that I believe it should have done from the very beginning. Now, moving on to the factions, we have the new units. We talked about that in the previous video that I posted today, all the new units. I'm going to be skipping through them. Let's just get to the balance changes here. So we have Abaya can now also trigger Death Wish ability of gold units. That's pretty busted. So 6 provision card now being able to proc a Death Wish ability on any unit is pretty scary if you ask me. We have Brewis can now also gain charges while in play. So if you're playing this a little bit early, it's going to be able to accrue charges when you play other crones, and that gives a little bit of support to not only putting these into maybe Death Wish, but it also helps out with the relics and whatnot. It makes it a little bit easier to establish grave if you need to for monsters. So that's kind of cool. Gale provision cost change from 7 to 6. I think so. That seems warranted. It wasn't super strong at 7. 6 can now give it a bit more play, give vampires some love, and add a bit more variety to monsters. Catechin ability change to Zeal. Order spawn in Ekamara in the row. Cooldown 4. Reduce the cooldown by 1 whenever bleeding is applied to an enemy unit. When I saw a sneak peek of this yesterday, I was actually really impressed. I think this is going to be super strong, and I'm excited to get onto that, especially with the new Regis Reborn. It's just adding a lot of really cool support to vampires that I think the game needs. This one's something that I'm actually really keen on, because if you guys played Gwent back when Death Shadow, is it? No, it's not Death Shadow. What was that leader's ability? See, it's been a while since it's been taken away from the game. It'll come to me. But I made like a deck basically where you had a bunch of Weavises on the board and you were just playing a bunch of stuff. It was pretty memey, but I'm excited about having Weavis Incantation, being able to consume an allied unit, and now we have a little bit more of a ceiling, so they can't remove it as easily, right? Having that extra consume can put it up to maybe 8 or 9 power, and again, protects it so that when we put down cards, the Death Wish ability is triggered. There's a lot of really good support for Death Wish being a buy in Weavis. I think it's going to be a powerhouse for control, and I'm looking forward to trying it that way. Now, Yega's provisions changed from 13 to 12. I think that's completely reasonable here because the card wasn't playable at 13 in most cases. There were just better options that you'd be choosing, and you'd tend to go for in that case. I've seen Yega in a lot of decks that otherwise would have used Kelly or She Who Knows, but it doesn't feel like a direct substitute, so this is pretty cool to see it at 12. We might actually see more play with that. Now, the Alps power changed from 3 to 4. That's cool. Like, for 5 provision card, Alp is going to be very strong, and we have the 3 bleeding on deploy, 3 bleeding on order, plus the 4 base power. I mean, that's playing for so many points. We have the 6 and 4, this 10 for a 5 provision card. So the ceiling on that's super high. Obviously, it takes a little bit of time, but I think that vampires should be rewarded for that over time, just because bleeding is very slow at the beginning. Now, flutter power changed from 5 to 4, so it's a little bit of a nerf in that case with the power. Provision changed from 5 to 6, so this is looking like more of a rework. Now, the ability changed to when bleeding is applied to an enemy, boost self by the amount applied. So remember before when it would have vitality and you'd have 20 vitality on something and you'd never actually get those points? Now what they're doing is they're actually allowing you to get that point in the form of a boost right away. So this, in my opinion, looks like a buff to the card, just based on the fact that you're getting that payoff much sooner. And it's not even that expensive to use, so it's really easy to fit into a deck. Refresh count at the beginning of your turn, perfect. Okay. Incubus power changed from 5 to 6. I mean, adding a power increase is always a good thing. Mare, I always butcher this, Mare Olorn, provision cost changed from 5 to 4. This one scares me as well, because look at it this way. You've got Weavis Incantation now. You've got the Abaya that triggers anything. You have Mare or Lorn that is also more inexpensive. So you can almost, like, in some cases, take a round 1 off doing like a Harpy Egg Swarm, because you have all the procs from this. You have your Stratagem and stuff like that, and it's just going to be pretty nuts. And then you have Abaya to help double proc maybe a gold later on. So it's pretty wild. Imagine like Imperial Manticore, Maruna, those types of things. Be pretty crazy. Now, moving on to Skellige. Again, the 2 new units, we'll look by them. If you guys want to check out the other video, you can go check that out, and we'll go over those for about half an hour. Onslaught ability changed to order damage an enemy unit by 3, charge 2. Whenever an enemy unit becomes damaged, give 1 armor to all pirates and ships in your hand. So I made an Onslaught deck recently, and I liked the extra little reach it had with the 1 damage on cooldown, but I felt like it was a little bit power corrupt with some of the more instant acting leaders that are in the game. So the fact that it uses 3 with a charge of 2, and the fact that you can actually target a specific unit, makes this actually very scary. Now, I would say it's arguably going to be better than Reckless Flurry at this point. I don't know what provisions they're going to leave it at, but the fact that you can actually pick is huge, because we saw in the Gwent Masters, you know, you can't always target what you want. Like, you're just doing randomized damage, and sometimes it really costs you. So that in itself is really cool. Being able to have the extra armor is really cool. It's going to synergize with Crack on Crate, and I'm excited to see where this one goes. Now, Artist provision changed from 12 to 11. I think that's good, because we want to be able to have something like an active tutor for cultists and really develop that archetype. And, you know, having this less expensive is really going to help with the whole Berserk thing. Cultists are going to be great. Like, this is actually going to be, by the looks of it, a playable archetype. Now, something that is a nerf, and I saw this one yesterday, and I'm sure you guys will agree, it's obviously a nerf with a provision nerf of 1 Coral. I think it's a warranted nerf. I think that it's necessary to do this, because every single Skellige deck is considering the discard package up until now for their decks. And, you know, I was doing it with Warriors, you'd be doing it with Gedenith, you'd be doing it with like a Berserk deck, or whatever the case may be. And to get away from that is healthier for the game. So 9 provision makes you think twice about maybe putting that in the deck. And here's another one that I'm sure some of you guys will be upset about, but it is what it is. Fuchsia provision cost changed from 13 to 14. It was already very expensive. Now it's tied for the most expensive unit in the game, but think about how game altering this card is. 14 provision just makes sense. There's so much power tucked into the Gedenith Battle Trance decks last season that I believe that this nerf was warranted. Now, Diamond Corsair power changed from 3 to 4. Provision cost changed from 5 to 4. Ability changed to Zeal. Order, remove up to 2 armor from an allied unit and boost self by the same amount. Cooldown 2. Whenever you play a ship, decrease the cooldown by 1. So that actually is a really nice little engine there, isn't it? Pretty exciting. And this just got a buff too. Wow, lots of pirate buffs here with Skellige. So that's kind of one of the things we're looking at, is the pirates and the Berserk type of play. Now, The Diamond Warship summons the highest power bronze pirate from your graveyard upon Death Wish. I want to say off the top of my head it was a random one before, so the fact that it's a highest power bronze pirate is really good, especially when you have things like the Tursic Invaders that are going to be 7 power. When you bring those out, it's just really good to be able to fetch that off of a card like this. Now, Northern Realms is up next, and looks like we're past the 10-minute threshold. I was feeling ambitious when I said that. Probably we'll get it within 20. Now, the 2 new units, we'll just look away here. Shield Wall provision bonus changed from 14 to 15. That's kind of what I was talking about in the last one with King Radovid. Just because, you know, Shield Wall is really nice here, and I'm looking forward to playing it again. I think it's been one of those things that's been cycled out of the meta long enough that we miss it a little bit, so looking forward to that. Uprising provision bonus change from 14 to 15. That's really good because now we might be able to see more inspired decks played. We might be able to see more Witchers coming back and a lot of things like that. Obviously, with the inflation of some of the cards that we had, it just makes sense to boost the leader to kind of stay relevant because for whatever reason, Northern Realms had some of the weaker provision allowances compared to, like, let's say Nilfgaard and Skellige and stuff like that, so it just makes sense to have here. Now, Letitia Charbonneau, her order change from no longer affects her own patience value when the abilities reset. I think that's definitely warranted because if you look at it this way, it was one card at 7 provision that drastically changed the game. It just multiplied so heavily, and I feel like it was just too much. It made mages very toxic for the ladder, so to have it in this way is just better for everybody. And Rafford's Vengeance is one of the big consistency cards for Northern Realms, so to have the provision cost change from 9 to 10, I think that's actually very good because it was an auto-include within any Northern Realms deck, and I tried making different variants of Revenants and all types of stuff last month, and it just felt like I was always coming back to this card. Now, with this card being more expensive, it's going to make the Alumni decks a little bit difficult to pull off because you can't tutor it with Amphibious Assault anymore, so you might have to have like a pincer maneuver or some other sort of customizations there to be able to get this guaranteed. With Scoia'tael, we have the 2 new units, as I mentioned. We can go ahead and skip over those ones here. With Salve, it transforms into the other Salve immediately upon entering the graveyard. Okay, rather than the end of the turn. I guess that's just like a visual thing so you can see. Abandoned Girl, this one's really cool. They announced it during the dev stream yesterday. The Abandoned Girl's ability changed to Order, transform into a young Dryad without changing power, and gain vitality equal to the number of Dryads in the row. So already this is actually going to be very, very strong. If you look at it this way, if you're playing Gift, which you'd often see this in a Gift list, you might have 4 or 5 Dryads on the row. You'd be able to stack that with Ethne and some of the Hamadryads and things like that. You'd be getting tons of vitality on this, and the fact that it's only 4 provision is just wild. So some support for Gift and those types of decks after recent nerfs keeps them competitive and whatnot. What I like best about the changes so far is the one to Bountiful Harvest. Let's choose between all bronze Scoia'tael elves. That's a nerf because before it was the Doblathena ones, you'd be rolling into really good top end picks. Now you might be low rolling as well, and I think to basically have something that was so rewarding, that was so inexpensive before, was very difficult for the meta. It was just not very healthy for it. And Catwitcher Saboteur now deals an additional 1 base damage, just to kind of give it more of a floor, I guess you could say. Before it was kind of one of those things where it was like it either works or doesn't work. Now it just gives you a little bit more to it. The matrons, this part's going to be scary though. With the provision cost of 5 to 4, you're going to be able to pack more engines into movement, some great support for them, and I'm looking forward to that as well. We might see the return of Gezra's decks and a lot of the movement decks. So I like that change. Now Nilfgaard, not a lot of changes here, but the ones they made are actually very important. So the Artode Terra Nova provision changed from 12 to 13. We're seeing lots of Assimilate decks last month. It was pretty much tier 1 to see Assimilate with Terra Nova and all that sort of stuff. To see the provisions change, it doesn't make it as much of an auto include, or it doesn't make you playing Assimilate as much of a necessity when you're playing Nilfgaard. So having it at 13 makes you think twice about that. And to obviously really round it out, they decided to go and nerf Brathens as well. The provision cost changed from 10 to 11. So again, the pair of them doesn't seem like a lot, but with Coup de Grace recently getting the nerf as well from 9 provisions to 10, the 3 of them collective is actually very difficult to fit into a deck. And at that point, you're going pretty well full-blown Assimilate opposed to some sort of hybrid deck. And it really keeps it, you know, more consistent with what I've seen from some of the other factions, and gives other factions a bit more of a chance to step up. So I like that quite a bit. The Fire Scorpion provision cost changed from 5 to 4. That's cool, because it was one of those things where it felt a little bit too expensive. If you put it on the board, you don't even get to use it once, and they remove it with like a rebuke or something like that. So to have instead, you know, the provision cost lower, it just makes sense. Now it's 4 power to remove it instead of 5, granted that the armor's gone, but with the provision adjustment I think it's fair. And Venedale Elite power changed from 4 to 5, so it's just a nice little point swing if you're looking to just have a proactive play. A lot of times when you're playing a tactic deck, it's difficult to get some proactivity, so having this card that can just come down for 1 extra point makes a big difference here. Now, okay, we're getting through this. Syndicate being the last one before a couple game fixes. We have a couple new cards. As I mentioned in the other video, you can go back and check on that. Now, this one was one of the ones that I'm most excited about, being Sacred Flame. The provision cost changed from 9 to 8, and I was saying that when I made a Fireswarm deck last month, a couple weeks ago, or yeah, so that I thought that this artifact needed resilience, but I think that this change is actually just as good, if not better. The provision from 9 to 8 really makes it playable into a round, and you don't feel like you're losing one of the biggest win conditions of the deck, especially with some of the new additions that we have here from Syndicate. It's just pretty wild, and I'm glad that they put more support into Fireswarm and less into Bounty, because they've been focusing on Bounty for the longest time, and I'm tired of seeing it compared to a lot of these other things like Fireswarm that just really never had the chance to take off in full capacity. There were people playing it, but it wasn't like the meta that we see, you know, from bounties and the crimes for the longest time over the last 6 months. Now, Surf Skewer Tooth tribute cost changed from 3 to 2. That's pretty wild, because with the new King of Beggars, there's going to be some crazy synergy going on with those guys here, and I'm really glad that the tribute archetype's getting some support as well. They really nailed this one here, and I'm really excited to see how they play. I think Syndicate's going to be one of the first ones that I go into playing, just because it's been a while since it's been something that I've really enjoyed, and I'm looking forward to it. Halfling Safecracker power changed from 4 to 5. Again, a little bit of a buff here. Makes these cards play for a bit more value. If you don't know, this basically boosts by 1 for every crime in hand. And then we have Renegade Mage. This is the card that I think a lot of people were sleeping on. I played with this card a couple times this month, and the power at 3 was kind of nice. So imagine base power 4, it's going to be getting 4 plus the 3 damage plus the tribute's free, because it's only 1, and if you play it with off the books, it's free. So it's a really good card for its provision now, being 4 and 3 points of reach or removal. Now, game fixes, we have an issue preventing users from launching the game. Okay, so that's been fixed. Duchess Informant and Emissary can now be cancelled. That's nice. If you make a mistake, you can sort of undo that mistake before it really penalizes you. You have Venedane correctly spawning premium copies of Waylay, so just some fine-tuning here. And no longer to lose armor when taking damage that exceeds the armor amount. Okay, that's good. Salve provision. Okay, so it's just basically like a rework of the visuals of some of the cards. Like, there's just some bugs they fixed here. Perfect. And some players are having issues with their connectivity, so that's really cool. I'm looking forward to it, guys, and I'm gonna see how quick I can get a couple good decks up for you guys. I'll probably do more Let's Plays than deck guides because the decks and the cards are going to be new, and surely enough, when you first start the new patch, especially with new cards, it's going to be crazy. So I don't expect to get 100% win ratio tomorrow and for the next few days until the meta sorts out, you know, but we'll get to it, and we'll show off what we've come up with. If you guys have any comments on this, anything that you like about this, don't like about this, let me know. We can have a chat about the patch notes, but all in all, it looks like it's good changes for the game so far. We'll see you guys tomorrow.